Well, vice presidential nominees Tim Kaine and Mike Pence are off the campaign trail this weekend. They're both hunkered down, prepping for their first and only debate. Historically, the vice presidential debate hasn't had much of an impact on the race overall, but with a pair of highly unpopular candidates at the top of the tickets, voters may be looking toward the number twos. Joining me now for a fair and balanced debate, Brian Hook is the former advisor to the Romney presidential campaign. Joe Listingi is a partner at the Chattered On Group. Thank you both for joining me. So I want to start with you, Brian, because I want to put up a poll. We just got some brand new Fox News polling in a two-way presidential voter preference. Clinton is polling now at 49%, Donald Trump at 44%. In your experience, because I know obviously you worked with the Romney campaign, is it an advantage to be an underdog ahead of these next two debates?
In some ways it is. And I think since looking at the Fox News poll, it was very clear that voters thought that she won. It was a fairly lopsided result. And I think I worked on Mitt Romney's debate prep pretty extensively. We started preparing for that debate months ahead. And I think the key lesson for the Trump folks is failing to prepare is preparing to fail. They have got to take debate prep seriously. We started months before we got to our first debate. She obviously came prepared for her debate. I think it showed, and you can't take debate prep seriously enough.
Yep. Okay, but Joe, I want to toss this question to you because she did appear very prepared, but could she perhaps maybe relax a little bit, maybe rest on her laurels, and maybe not prepare as much for the next two because she thinks she has it in the bag?
The Clintons have been in the public life for so long. I don't think they ever underestimate anything that's coming down the track towards them. The good news here, I think, for the Trump campaign is that the bar is now so low for them. As long as his head doesn't seem to explode on TV, he's going to be viewed as a winner in the second debate. His performance has been resounding. That it was just poor and it was awful. And Hillary looked good. She's good stature, good stamina, hit her points, hit a lot of zingers, and he just seemed to fall apart. So if there's anything good coming out of this first debate for Donald Trump is that the bar is so low. He doesn't really need to do anything to step over it. He just needs to not really mess up or take the bait again. And I'm sure Hillary and her team right now are prepping more lures and bait out there that he'll trip over again.
Okay, well, you said take the bait, and I want to put up one more Fox News poll because we also thought this was fairly interesting. It says, has temperament to serve effectively as president? And we see with this most recent poll, Clinton's polling at 67% and Donald at 37%. So, Brian, what does he need to do ahead of this next debate to say, listen, I do have the temperament? And I will challenge Joe a little bit because there are points where his pundit said he did use restraint. Do you agree with that, Brian?
I think looking at those numbers on temperament, I think what the voters are saying there on temperament to Donald Trump is, show me, don't tell me. And that's going to be his challenge. It's not enough to say, as he did in the last debate, that I've got better temperament. Temperament is something that you earn over a period of time. And doing 3 a.m. tweet storms doesn't help that. And so I think when he is talking about voters and the concerns of voters, he does well. When he talks about himself and lets Hillary get under his skin, he does very poorly. And so I think that's the other big takeaway from the last debate. Talk about voters, don't talk about yourself. Okay,
when you talk about voters, you're talking about a motivation, which sort of brings me to my next poll, and I want to pose this question to Joe.
Yeah.
When you look at this particular poll, I want to get your reaction because I'm not sure if you were surprised or not. What is motivating voters in this election cycle? 57% say fear for the other candidate winning the election. What is your takeaway from that? Because that's pretty jarring.
Well, if you go back to your lead when we were talking about the vice presidential debate, not many people are very happy with the two options. It's more of an anti-opponent vote than it is a pro-your candidate vote, right? The enthusiasm is so mixed on all of this. So what you're really looking at here underneath all of these enthusiasm questions and motivation questions, there have been two big driving things. This fear of Donald Trump becoming president and his temperament, and this dishonesty that has been tagged to Hillary for so long. Except this poll actually asked the dishonesty question again, and now Donald Trump is is more dishonest than Hillary Clinton. Now, that poses a problem. So when we look at the motivations, it's what are these campaigns using to motivate their voters and sway those undecided voters in the middle. And for some reason, the track that was working for Donald Trump has now completely flipped course.
Well,
and it's
many people will
him.
say, you know, what you do need to shift course when you're running a primary campaign and then when you're running a general election campaign. Those are two totally different things. But Brian, I want to pose a question to you. We heard Joe specifically say anti-opponent vote. How do you win an anti-opponent vote, especially when we're 50-some-odd days away from the election?
I think you need to have brilliance in the basics. You've got to get at what works. And he was obviously able to dial in a frequency in voters in the primary. To win a general election, you've got to broaden your appeal. You can't go narrow and deep. You need to go sort of widen and broaden your base. And he's got 40 days left to do that. Over the last week since the debate, he's been kind of going narrow and deep and focusing on beauty pageants, which is not a winning formula.
All right, Joe, I'm going to give you the last word. We have about 20 seconds left.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, right? General elections are about
I'm not sure if we want you guys to agree. That's where it is.
But I will say this. I mean, when we look at the general election, right, we're talking about large swaths, and we're talking about coalition building, which when you look at the numbers underneath the Fox News poll, that there are tons of fissures in there for him to deal with. Basically, his support is all white, and it is all Republican. And when we look at diversity groups and the gender gap after this debate exploded for Hillary Clinton. And the biggest problem right now, compared to when Romney was running 4 years ago, there are states voting right now, and the early votes in these states are just increasing.
Right.
There's more participation, which is great for our democracy. But that also means a lot of people locked in their votes this week, and Donald Trump could have paid a price given his performance.
No, you're right. We saw that with the Clinton campaign. There were people leaving her event from Iowa and going straight to the polls. That was a very effective tool regardless of your politics. So you're right, it has changed. Joe and Brian, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
I appreciate it. We'll have you back soon.